I am Thomas Jefferson, a man whose words and actions have been debated and often misunderstood throughout history. Perhaps that is the price one pays for daring to shape the future of a people. My role in the creation of a nation, this idea of liberty that we dared to call America, was neither simple nor free of conflict. Yet allow me to share my version of events with you, in the hope that, through it, you may understand the motives and dreams that once drove me. I was born in Virginia, on a small property called Shadwell, in the year 1743. I can still recall the vibrant fields and rolling hills where I spent my childhood. It was a peaceful place, where the whispers of nature, the rustling leaves, the flowing rivers, the songs of birds formed a perfect harmony with the rhythms of life. Even in those early years, I knew I was part of something greater, something intertwined with the land itself. The land and its people, I soon realized, were the true essence of any nation. It was in the quiet solitude of those landscapes where the seeds of my thoughts on liberty began to take root. Not just the freedom of a boy running across a field, but something far deeper, the right of a man, and indeed a nation, to determine its own destiny. Yet the Virginia of my youth was also a place of contradictions. I was born into a world that celebrated the ideals of freedom while simultaneously practicing the institution of slavery. This troubling paradox would remain with me throughout my life, shaping my thoughts and actions in ways I could never fully reconcile. But let me start at the beginning with my love for learning. From a young age, I was drawn to books. My father, Peter Jefferson, instilled in me a thirst for knowledge, and when he passed away, leaving me a considerable estate, I buried myself in my studies. The works of philosophers Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau set my mind alight, and their ideas about government, liberty, and the natural rights of man resonated with me in ways I could not yet fully articulate. But I knew, even then, that the status quo, the world in which kings and tyrants ruled with an iron hand, was not the world I wanted for America. As I delved deeper into the works of the Enlightenment, I became convinced of one fundamental truth: liberty was not a privilege granted by rulers, but an inherent right, a birthright. This conviction drove me forward through the early years of my political life, culminating in the momentous events of the 1770s. The colonies were grumbling, restless under British rule, and I, like many of my compatriots, began to dream of a future where we could govern ourselves, free from the arbitrary laws and taxes imposed by a distant monarch. Independence was no longer just a hope, it was a necessity. The chains that bound us to Britain had to be broken if we were to thrive. And so when the time came to draft the Declaration of Independence, I was ready. Each word, each carefully chosen phrase, was a reflection of my deepest beliefs that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I knew these words had the power to change the course of history, but even as I wrote them, I was acutely aware of the contradictions that existed within our new nation. How could we, in good conscience, declare that all men are created equal while allowing slavery to persist? This internal conflict gnawed at me, for I owned slaves, a fact that history would neither forget nor forget, nor forgive. I made attempts to challenge the institution, but my efforts were always met with resistance. I was torn between my ideals and the harsh realities of the world in which I lived. Nonetheless, I pressed on. The revolution was upon us, and there was no turning back. The Continental Congress adopted the Declaration in July of 1776, and with that bold act, we officially severed our ties with Britain. The war that followed was brutal, filled with moments of doubt and hardship. But I never lost faith in the American cause. I knew that the struggle for independence was just the first step in a much larger journey, a journey that would test the very fabric of our young nation. When the war finally ended and the British surrendered at Yorktown in 1781, I believed that America's future was bright, though far from certain. The task of building a government system that truly reflected the will of the people was daunting. I had long believed that power should reside with the people, that democracy, for all its flaws, was the only system that could ensure true freedom. My vision was one of a nation where the government interfered as little as possible in the lives of its citizens, allowing them to pursue happiness in their own ways. My years as Secretary of State under George Washington and later as Vice President under John Adams were marked by political conflict. The debates between Federalists and Democratic Republicans threatened to tear our new government apart. I was firmly on the side of those who believed in limiting the power of the federal government, advocating for a more agrarian society where the common man, the farmer, the laborer would be the backbone of the nation. I believed that the concentration of power in the hands of a few would inevitably lead to tyranny, just as it had in Europe. My opponents, however, favored a stronger central government, one that could wield power to ensure stability and growth. We fought bitterly over these issues, but I never wavered in my conviction that the strength of America lay in its people, not its rulers. When I was elected president in 1801, I saw it as an opportunity to put my vision into practice. One of my first and most significant acts as president was the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. It was a bold move, one that doubled the size of our nation and opened up vast new lands for settlement. Some criticized me for overstepping my constitutional authority, but I believed that the expansion was essential for the future of the Republic. The land would provide opportunities for generations to come, farmers, explorers, and dreamers who would push the boundaries of our young nation further westward. Yet, even as I celebrated this achievement, I knew that our expansion came at a cost. The Native American tribes who had long inhabited these lands would be displaced, their way of life irrevocably altered. It was another painful contradiction in a life filled with them. As I look back now, I can see that my presidency was not without its faults. The Embargo Act of 1807, which I believed would protect American interests by cutting off trade with Britain and France, proved disastrous for our economy. It is perhaps one of my greatest regrets, but leadership, I have come to understand, is not about perfection. It is about making the best decisions one can with the information available and accepting the consequences of those decisions, both good and bad. Even after I retired from public life, my mind never ceased to contemplate the future of the nation I had helped to create. I spent my final years at Monticello, my beloved home, corresponding with old friends and political allies. My thoughts often turned to education, for I believed that an informed citizenry was the bedrock of any democracy. It was for this reason that I founded the University of Virginia, an institution dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and the cultivation of free thought. I hoped that through education, future generations would carry on the ideals of liberty and self-governance that I had so ardently fought for. And so, as I reflect on my life, I can look back with the greatest satisfaction, because I am convinced that the ideas I fought for, the liberties I believed in, will continue their course, nurtured and evolving along with the nation I so dearly loved. In the end, my story is not just my own, it is the story of a people who dared to claim their freedom and with it, the life they have always deserved.